Hello and welcome to Culture Over Coffee, a podcast focused on improving company culture and fostering employee engagement. Every week we chat with experts and thought leaders about the latest information and proven practices you can use to reduce regrettable turnover, increase productivity on your team, and retain key customers. So pour a cup of your favorite brew and join us. I'm your host, Beth Sunshine, SVP at Up Your Culture and the Center for Sales Strategy. In this episode, we're going to examine the current state of recruitment and discuss how tough the situation is right now for so many. We're also going to break down how to best approach your recruitment efforts in order to find the top talent your organization needs, no matter what is going on in the world. Joining me today to talk about it all is a bona fide recruitment expert, Beth Meadows, Senior Executive VP at Personnel Resources. Beth shares so many amazing insights, like why you have to go about wooing potential employees in the same way that you woo clients, how not taking a good, hard look at why people are leaving your organization is like filling a Styrofoam cup with a hole in the bottom, and finally, how staying in touch with those A players that moved on to work for a different company just might result in them boomeranging back to you down the road. Well, welcome, Beth, and thank you so much for joining me today for Culture Over Coffee. I'm so glad to have you here.
Beth, it's great to be here today.
Thank you. So I was just sort of thinking about our conversation that we're going to have today. I pulled out the magazine you wrote in our talent magazine last year. We have a Straight from the Experts segment, and you wrote an article, 5 tips on improving and streamlining your hiring process. And that was a while ago now. That was our 2022 magazine. So it's been a bit since we've gotten to tap you for some great recruitment information, insight. So we're really glad to be able to do that today during the Culture Over Coffee podcast. I've prepared a bunch of questions to ask you today. Got a lot to get to in a short period of time. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So I am fascinated by the strong connection that exists between culture and recruitment. I see it all the time. The better your culture, the more success you'll have recruiting top talent to join your organization. And at the same time, it kind of works the other way. Every hire an organization makes either adds to or detracts from their culture. So it's a cyclical kind of thing. It all starts with recruitment. With that said, it seems that recruitment is going to be even potentially more important, but also tougher this year than it has been in the past. I don't know. I want to hear from you, from your vantage point. What are the top drivers that are making recruitment more challenging right now? And just what do you think about that in general?
Yes. What is it they say? If you want to hear God laugh, tell him you're playing, right? So many times I heard, let's say pre-COVID, right? I heard employers make statements like, it's never been this hard. Oh my goodness. We're struggling on all fronts, particularly when you think about really skilled positions or positions where there's a finite group of talent. And then my gracious, COVID came along and what a disruptor, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the first reason that recruitment is going to continue to be tough is that we've just not fully rebounded from the disruption of COVID. I think, employees had really real challenges with getting to work. Schools were shut down. Parents had to learn how to teach their children at home. And in all of those changes that occurred as a nation, as we were getting through COVID together, it's just left kind of a permanent mark. Additionally, if you Google labor participation rates in general still remain extremely low. And what that means is that there just aren't as many people interested in working as there are available positions. And then when you sprinkle in that a healthy dose of, there are just some really skill shortages out there. And if you don't believe me, try to get something done at your home, right? Try to schedule an appliance repairman, or try to get a plumber or somebody to come to your home, and you are likely to encounter healthy weights. And so all of those things together are just really kind of the perfect storm. It's really difficult for employers to find people, because in general, people just aren't as interested in working as they used to be.
Very interesting. It's a candidate's market for sure. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes that an organization can make in its recruitment efforts right now?
Here's my favorite mistake that employers make, and I see it all the time, and that is we wait to get started until we're already in a bind,
Hmm,
right?
yes.
So here is, I think, perhaps one of the biggest cultural shifts as it pertains to the recruitment process. And if there are listeners today, don't take away anything else from what I'm going to say. I think this is the big aha moment. So I hope everybody's ready for it. Here we go.
I'm ready.
We have to think about wooing potential employees to our business in the same way that we woo clients.
Hmm,
So throughout all of our companies, right, we have very specific marketing strategies, sales strategies, pricing strategies, branding strategies, all the things that we do that are centered around the whole idea of bringing customers into our business. Yet time and time again, we just wait until we're short, and then we want to create, a boring ad, and maybe we share it a few places and maybe we don't, and we just expect magic to happen. And today's workforce is just not going to respond to those sorts of bland, generic efforts.
hmm.
I think the number two thing that employers need to do differently is that they have to make the recruiting process easier. It's no secret that in many instances, the best candidates are already working.
Right.
Yet, so many times I talk to employers whose natural line of thought is to schedule interviews during the workday, which means that working employees have to take PTO or take off work to come pursue an opportunity with my company. And that's just bonkers, right? We
Right.
have to meet people where they are. And if, particularly the best talent, right? The people that we're trying to woo, those A players, the game changers, the people that we're all really fighting for, those diamonds in the rough, the best way to stand out is to figure out when's it convenient for them, right?
Hmm,
And can I do and not just a traditional kind of interview, right? Could I do a Teams interview or a Zoom interview or a phone call? Could we do something in advance that's a low risk activity for the applicant so that they can determine, oh gosh, this is something once I've determined, hey, I really want to work for personnel resources or for culture over coffee, or I want to work wherever this is, then maybe I'm willing to do more. And I think that includes not just accessibility and being available, but also really taking a hard look at your screening steps and are they still relevant, right? This is probably not the market to roll out things that make the pool smaller, because it's possible for the pool to be non-existent if we're too picky, which is such a crazy thing for a 27-year recruiting veteran to say, right? I'm supposed to help people boil it down, but I'm saying the pool of people is plenty small. So let's be realistic. And I think, the third thing that employers, I think, really need to think about when it comes to potential mistakes is failing to recognize why good people are leaving,
hmm.
fixing it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So even if we do the other two things, even if we're recruiting, even if we're proactive in doing all the things that make, we're recruiting for people, 24/7, 365 days a year, even if we are being accessible, we are being respectful of people's time, we're making the process easy. If we're not taking a look at why people are leaving, then we've got a styrofoam cup with a hole in the bottom, and it doesn't matter how many more people we pour in, we're never going to get full, right? So it's really, really incumbent on employers to take a hard look, and sometimes that's painful, right? Because what if the problem is me? What if I'm the problem, right? What if one of the reasons that that people don't want to work here is that I'm a micromanager, or that my expectations are now unrealistic? But whatever it is, employers owe it to themselves, and they owe it to the recruitment process to see what they can do to prevent it in the first place.
Okay, that gives us a lot to think about. I just want to sort of recap because there was so much good stuff in there. So you talked about the importance of a strong talent bank. And I love that you touched upon it has to be something you focus on 365 days of the year. It can't be something you wait for an opening. When you have a job opening, the very best talent is not sitting around waiting to hear from you. They're working. So I love that thought of treating them like prospects, future clients, wooing them. You also talked about the value of creating an environment where people thrive so that, if there is a problem, if it's either a cultural problem or maybe something related to a manager that's getting in the way of employee retention, you can fix that. The Styrofoam cup, boy, that really will stick with me. And then the need for simplicity. That need for simplicity in the application process, that really stuck with me. I recently read, we're putting together our next year's talent magazine right now. So I've got a million stats in my head. I recently read that nearly 60% of job seekers quit online job applications midway through due to their length or their complexity. I don't know if that jives with what you know. That's a lot.
You need to lower, we call it in the staffing industry, we call it barrier to entry. So you want a low barrier to entry, which means, people are looking for whiffums. What's in it for me, right? What's in it for me? So why do I want to give 30 minutes of my life to an application process when I have no idea what's in it for me? Right. So it doesn't even make sense for you and I. I wouldn't do that either, right?
I wouldn't either.
So why would we think that the average job seeker, because the other thing that's radically different about recruiting in general, and I think that this is a systemic change that's here to stay, is that passive job seeking is now like it's like a new pastime, right? I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me. They're not really unhappy in what they're doing. They're just wanting to see if this is as good as it gets for them. Are they missing out? Is there another opportunity where something's better? The benefits are better, the compensation's better, the opportunity to learn something new is better. There's better professional development. There's more work-life balance. What is it? So if we believe that to be true, and I certainly do, that passive job seeking is now kind of a hobby, right, for people.
Interesting.
Then it really, really resonates, I think, and makes sense that you would want people to inquire about you in a way that's as easy for them as possible.
Right. I agree. No matter how green someone's grass is, they're always wondering if the grass might not be just a little bit greener. Interesting. That's a new hobby. All right. So with that in mind, any pro tips you'd share related to recruitment that our listeners might be able to learn from?
Yes, I've got several. So the first one is, if you believe my point about kind of making it a year-round activity, right? We need a marketing piece. We need a marketing piece that tells our story. What do we do? Who do we serve? Why does, how does our work matter? Right? Those are emotional triggers that could really resonate with a passive job seeker. But then we also need to talk about, benefits, things, anything that you're comfortable sharing that's going to help elicit interest. So I'm really serious when I say we have to woo job seekers in the same way that we have to woo potential customers for our company. It's the same concept. And I would even go so far as to say, particularly for any manager, we use a little business card that's called, we call it, I like the way you work. And I keep it on my person at all times, right? Now, I am a girly girl and I am getting ready to go to Vegas. And so when I go to Vegas, I'll be wearing a crossbody and I probably won't have business cards in it. Right?
But other than Vegas, you have it with you.
When I'm scooting around town, right? When I'm scooting around town and I'm grocery shopping and I am having dinner, lunch, brunch with friends, and I'm having dinner with friends, and I am going to the dry cleaners and I encounter people that make a positive impression. Whether they're working or not, I slip them one of this card and I'd say, listen, you've impressed me. If you ever want to make a change, I'd love to hear from you. So I like the way you work cards. And then also, I'm a big fan of an employee referral program. Not such a big fan of hiring bonuses. And I'll tell you why. So the only time I would be a fan of a hiring bonus is when the position is when the skill set is a skill set of one in a company. There's only one in a company that in that jobs in that skill set, right?
Okay.
But more often than not, we see companies that are doing hiring bonuses for lots of positions. And the reason I'm not a fan of that is because to me, that is kind of a slap in the face of your existing employees who are there making it happen. If you have gotten to the point where you're having to offer a hire bonus, it's probably a pretty reasonable deduction that you're short staffed, which means that people that are there now, toeing the line day in, day out, are already tired and frustrated. So, seeing that you're willing to pay somebody extra to come in is probably not going to make them feel very good about their decision to stick with your company, and could actually temporarily make your problem worse, right? So I like it. I like an employee referral bonus. Come up with a dollar amount that you can live with, put some teeth in it, put some criteria that says we only pay it if we end up making it higher. The hire has to work here for 90 days, 6 months, 2 weeks, 12 months, whatever it is, so that the return on the investment, right, for the bonus that you're going to pay makes good financial sense. And I think in doing that, we're sending the message to our employee base: thank you for being here. We value you. Help us help you by bringing other good people into our company. So that's my second tip. And then I would say my third tip, you mentioned a phrase earlier. You said the grass is not always greener.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, couldn't agree more. And particularly in the last 2 years where we've had, I think it's been called the Great Resignation, right? Where even great companies have had, unprecedented amounts of turnover because of a lot of the disruptors that were sort of created by COVID. And so I'm a big fan in staying in touch. When you lose an A player, keep in touch. Text them, email them. How's it going? Do you like it? And don't make them feel bad about making a decision that they're making because they think it's good for their family. Support them. Say, you know what? We hated to lose you, but you're right. I understand where that schedule or the ability to work from home or that pay increase or whatever it was something you couldn't turn down. But let me just say that if anything changes and if this new employer does not deliver on the things that they promised you, we want to hear from you. I just can't say enough good things about that tactic. And I think too often that as hiring managers and as employers, we get our feelings hurt when a good person leaves. And so we tend to kind of get mad and we don't stay in touch because our pride won't allow us. I'm saying suck it up. Suck it up, people. And don't fall into that trap and put yourself in their shoes. And frequently there's a boomerang effect and you can take full advantage of it.
Wise words. And I've heard called boomerang employees.
Yeah.
And it does seem as though there's so much to be gained from that. One thing is certainly when they come back, they don't require a lot of training and onboarding. They're pretty much ready to roll right away. They've got the relationships, experience. Oh, I like it.
Fabulous. It's fabulous. And I think the other thing is that I'm a proponent. I'm a lifelong learner, right? I'm one of those people that I enjoy reading. I enjoy getting better. I enjoy learning new things. And I think that learning comes in waves. So when people leave your company, right, and then they come back and they already start with this base knowledge, then I think one of the reasons that, at least in my experience, that these employees have come back and made such a powerful impact is it's because their learning took them to the next level. So now when they come back, right, the things that they're focused on are not the elementary things. I mean, they're really digging in and understanding the why behind why we do things. Why is this important? And that's really how productivity, it's where it's all the good stuff when you think about employee engagement. And we know, right, that when you have really highly engaged employees, that as companies, that's when our profits climb. It's when the work gets easier. It's more fun. I mean, it's just, it brings all the good stuff.
It does. I love that. It brings all the good stuff. We
Yes.
at Up Your Culture, when we work with clients at the end of year 2 in our 2-year program, we work with them to build what we call a culture video so that they can showcase what their culture looks like and use that in marketing and a marketing strategy for recruitment. So we're always kind of thinking about how to tie those two things together. When you were talking, I actually found this. For those listening, you can't see what I'm holding up, but one of our Up Your Culture clients built a card just like what you're talking about. So you're impressive, let's talk. And then there's information on the back. I thought that was really clever, something you're recommending too. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the world of work and how today's work models impact recruitment. I know hybrid and remote work models have broadened the talent pool in a big way for a lot of businesses, but these same work models also pose some challenges. So I figured we could talk about that for a minute. What trends are you seeing related to the world of work, hybrid versus remote versus in office? And then how do you tackle that hot topic in the world of recruitment?
So I think you have to tackle it with a healthy dose of reality, right? And I also think that as employers, we have to, it's really important that we're open-minded. And just because a position has or has not been remote or office-based in the past doesn't mean that it could or couldn't necessarily in the future, right? So the first thing that I think has changed is that particularly during COVID, right? We had just so many weird things happen. In fact, many days I woke up and I kept thinking, am I on an episode of Punk'd? I mean, is Ashton Kutcher going to jump out somewhere? And, because there were just so many odd things that the whole idea that some work was not essential, right? That only essential workers needed to go to work just kind of blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be open-minded, first of all. And I'll say that during all of that, we're in Dothan, Alabama. We're in Southeast Alabama. Historically, remote work was not very prevalent here. In fact, in our own company, in my own work team, I have directly about 20 employees that are under me. And I had one remote employee at the time. I now have 7. Right?
Big difference.
So big difference, right? And I think, but I also, in the 7 employees that I have working remotely are all wildly successful employees. So I think for some employers, there's a fear. What if work is not happening? If I let people work from home, what if work is not happening, right? So we have to be better managers. We have to get better at holding people accountable. We have to get better at communicating what the expectations are, right? And so that we can make those arrangements successful. But in our situation, it has been very, very successful. Having said that, everybody in our company can't be a remote employee, right? So all positions do not lend themselves to a remote work environment. Conversely, I had a remote job 20-something years ago. I hated it. So for some people, it's just not fun, right? It's not fun. So I think that you need to use remote work as an option when it makes sense for your company. So in our situation, it gave us access to talent that we otherwise would not have had. Okay. So for a multitude of reasons, we had a staff member that's been with us a long time that was moving. Her husband got transferred. We thought we were going to lose her. And then, kind of at the 9th hour, I'm like thinking to myself, hey, dummy, you have choices. You don't have to. So I said, hey, would you consider? And she's like, I would consider. I don't want to leave. Of course I would consider. It's been very successful. Was able to hire another employee who she homeschools her children. So for her, remote work is something that was really important to her in order to make that work for her family. So I have to have access to people that I otherwise wouldn't have access to. Now, the flip side of that is now that remote work is more of a thing here, right? It also means that I'm competing for talent, not just
Right.
on a geographic basis, right? So in our bigger companies, so we have about 75 staff members total in all three of our entities. We lost some companies to a California-based employer that figured out, oh gosh, we can hire these, this company has some great talent. Let me get over here and get them. And they did. So we lost people, but I think that, I think overall that the world is evolving. And I think we as employers, which is why I think it's important that if you are leading an organization, if you're a hiring manager, if you're a C-suite, if you're an individual entrepreneur, right, you have to arm yourself with these facts, and you have to be willing to consider things that you haven't considered before, and to really think through it and to figure out, why am I opposed to this? Is there a good fundamental reason, or is it just because I haven't done it before? And we've got to be open-minded. And I'll say this too, an interesting phenomenon and I haven't pulled a quotable statistic, but I bet if you got on our friend Google that we could find one in a minute. I have noticed, so we, as a temporary help company, so we have a temporary help company too. I've noticed that on average, the average hours worked of our employees is down. So I think another big trend that's happening, and I hear it all the time, is that employees don't want to work. They barely want to work a 40-hour week. And I'm generalizing, right? I'm not saying that there isn't anybody out there. I'm also not saying that that makes people bad if they feel that way. What I am saying is that more than ever, I think people are prioritizing family, friends. They want balance in their life. They do not want to be a slave to their job, particularly if it's a job they really don't even enjoy, right? Which is how we get back to, or would I want to work for me, right? So I think working less is kind of a trend. The remote hybrid trend, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to continue. And I think you're going to see people. I also think that even employees that may or may not want to be hybrid or remote or in office today, I think over the course of a career, your feelings on those would change, right? If you lived somewhere where you had a 45-minute commute and you had school-age children and you were thinking, wow, if I didn't have to give up that 45-minute commute one way, I could get my laundry done, I could do my meal planning, I could be much more productive while I'm at home, and it would make me a better parent, and I'd be you know what I mean? And then the children, leave and go off to school, and you're like, oh, I miss interaction outside the home. So I also think that just because somebody is choosing something today doesn't necessarily mean that that's the thing that they want for life.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and we'll make this the last question of the day, although, boy, I could talk to you forever. If you could wave a magic wand and just improve anything related to recruitment, what would you change?
Two things. Okay, so the first one is I would combine all of the background. I would combine all the databases, and this is actually doable. I do not know why our federal government does not do this, but currently, when you're running a criminal background check, there are all different kinds of criminal background check databases, and there isn't one master database. Coincidentally, there's also not the E-Verify database that is required for most states. I think there's 7 or 8 states in the country that do not require E-Verify. It's not integrated. And the IRS website so that to prevent people from using other people's social security, none of that's integrated. So if we could have one database and you could see unequivocally, not only is this person not a murderer in Alabama, but guess what? They're not a murderer anywhere. Yay, right? And I know that the social that they've given me is in fact their social, and I know that they're not that they're E-Verify approved, right? So one single database, amazing.
Big
The
difference.
thing would be, I wish our high schools, I had a high school senior, my daughter graduated high school in 2018, and it astounded me how much of a fluff year that was. Now she would be mortified to hear me saying this, right? Because they had a good time. But I hear this over and over with my friends that have high school seniors. There isn't a lot of real work that happens. We have a lot of fun. And I think we could redeploy some of that time into a curriculum that really helps students understand what's coming next when they enter the workforce. I think we get it backwards. I think we're pressuring people, particularly young adults, to decide what they want to do for college in many instances before they have any idea what the working world is about, or even the kinds of professions that are out there. And so I see so many people that have misspent money on a degree that wasn't for them, or they get into college and realize college isn't for them, or they bypass another career that could be a trade or a career technical program where they might actually, with less education, less cost, make more money and be happier. So if there were a way, I know you said one magic wand, but I want to,
you get two.
I could have two magic things that I would fix.
I'd give you two. Those were good. Gives us a lot to think about, just approaching young adults sooner. And you're right. There are a lot of wasted college degrees, and how can we help bypass that? Very good stuff. Thank you so much, Mary Beth, for the time that you have spent today talking about culture over coffee with me. You shared a ton of great information, a lot of really specific tactical ideas that our listeners can take and try right away. I mean, there's a lot of valuable stuff in this. So for those listening, I am going to drop Mary Beth's LinkedIn information in the show notes. You might want to connect with her. I sure would if I were you. And also, I'm going to add the link for the 2022 Talent Magazine. There's a whole Up Your Culture section in it, but there's also a section on recruitment, selection, and development. And that's where you'll see Mary Beth's article in the recruitment section. It's a great article, one you'll want to check out. And then finally, I'm going to add a link to the self-inventory checklist. So if you'd like, you can take a few minutes and just get a better sense of what your company culture or employee engagement might look like right now, and think about how that might tie into recruitment for you. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Mary Beth, for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, it has been a pleasure for me too. It is a journey to up your culture and elevate employee engagement. So to all those listening, enjoy the journey. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Culture Over Coffee. If you've enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and join us for every episode. For more helpful information on the topics of company culture and employee engagement, visit us at upyourculture.com.